This is Carl Johnson of CJ Behavior Coaching and Consulting, and welcome to our podcast today. Today is Saturday, April 7th, 2018, and today we're going to talk about having tools and having effective tools, and we're going to talk about two tools that if you have in your toolbox that you should throw out immediately. So as the post says, in a crisis situation with children, you need tools, not just any tools, you need effective tools. Threats and bribes are not effective tools. And what we're going to talk about is using threats and bribes to get your child to do what you want them to do, and just the harmful effects of using threats and bribes with your child, and also the effect it has on the situation and the fact that it will actually make those difficult situations with your child actually repeat itself. Now, let's just take a scenario. If you were out at a store and your child asks you for something, to purchase them an item, shirt, pants, food, candy, and your response was no. And your child said, but I want it anyway. And they begin to throw a fit or throw a tantrum or lay on the ground, or you start to get really, really loud. Well, those situations are very embarrassing for anyone, especially for a parent or any kind of caregiver in a situation, because you have people staring at you. And immediately as a parent or caregiver, you start to feel like you're now being judged based on how your child is acting. Okay? So what tends to happen in a situation like this, especially if you are not prepared for that situation, is a parent or caregiver will tend to do two things. They will either threaten a child to get them to comply with what they said, or they will bribe a child to get them to stop what they're doing and do what they told them to do. So what happens, the scenario looks like this. You may say, if you don't get up off this floor, if you don't start screaming in the store, I'm going to take this away. I'm going to make sure you don't get this. I'm going to make sure this doesn't happen. So those things are threats. It's a threat of, you're going to go to bed early. I'm going to take your toys away from you. I'm going to take your snack away from you. I'm going to take some fun event you're supposed to have later on this week away from you. I'm going to take this away from you. And those things are all threats to take things away in an effort to get them to stop behaving the way they're behaving right at that moment. Well, then on the other side, we have the bribes. So you have a situation where you're very embarrassed and your child is on the floor and saying, I'm not going to do this and give it to me now. So then you may turn around and say, okay, I'll give it to you now, but next time, no. Or, okay, if you get up off the floor, when we get home, I'll give you extra this. Hey, I have a piece of candy in my pocket. You can play with my phone, and those kind of things. Well, those things are bribes. So both of those things, threats and bribes, are not effective tools because on one end, you're saying, I'm going to inflict all these things on you, or I'm going to spank you, I'm going to hit you, or I'm going to take this away from you. And it's to make them afraid of you to stop doing what they're doing. Well, that's exactly what a threat is to anyone, to a child or to an adult, is to make you think, and is supposed to create fear. Well, then on the other side is bribes. It's like, hey, what can I do to give you to make this all go away? So you may say, well, I bribe my child. I give him candy. I give her this. Or I say, if you don't get up, or I count, or the famous 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, or else. Those things come up. You might say, well, what's the big deal? What's the harm in doing that? Well, the harm in doing that is you create a situation where you're teaching your child, in a tough situation, here's how I'm supposed to act. Here's how I'm supposed to respond. If someone doesn't do what I told them to do, I can threaten them with taking things away, or I can threaten them with harming them to get them to comply with what I want to do. And on the other end, your child will learn from you, what kind of deal can I do to sweeten things up to make you do what I told you to do? Okay, so your child would do that in a situation with their peer. Maybe your child is at school and someone's not doing what they're supposed to do. And what if your child says, if you don't do this, I'm going to pop you in the mouth. If you didn't do this, I'm going to grab you by the arm. Well, you might say to yourself, or your teacher may hear that and then call you and say, hey, your child is threatening to pop another kid in the mouth. Your child is threatening to take some things away from another child. And the question then becomes, where did your child learn that? Well, your child learned that from you, or your child learned that from somebody who's using those techniques on them. And those things are basically creating a fearful situation. But then you have bribes. You're thinking, well, if I just give them something and make this go away, we can all get back home peacefully and calmly and no harm, no foul. And in an emergency situation, yes, there's parents who have used that at a time. But what happens is these things aren't used once. These things are things that are relied upon because it appears that they're effective, or you're just trying to get through to the next moment. Well, what happens is these things both have to be increased the next time because, again, if you said, if you don't do this, I'm going to take away your video games. And then your child does it that time. And the next time, I'm going to take away your video games and then your TV time and then your movie time. And I'm going to take away outside and your bike and a field trip. You begin to increase those things to get them to comply with what you want them to do. The same thing when it comes to bribes. If you say, well, I'll give you 1 cookie this time, well, the next time they might be expecting 2 cookies or 3 cookies, or not just cookies. Now I want ice cream. And it starts to build up, and you have a situation where they're still not doing what they're supposed to do. You could also create an environment that teaches them any grown up, anytime I don't want to do something, someone's going to cut a deal with me. Well, when your child goes to school, your teacher, if your child goes to the library, if your child goes to the store, people aren't cutting deals with them. That's not the real world. You want to prepare them for real world situations, and giving and cutting bribes with them and threatening them is not the way to handle things. So, and usually threats and bribes happen when we're caught off guard and we're not prepared for a situation that we're in with our child. So if you're caught off guard in a situation with your child and you're using these things, what you want to do is ask yourself, what other tools are there out there other than threatening my child or bribing my child to help prevent some of these situations from happening, and also to help me get through this thing and my child get through this situation without harming them physically or emotionally. Because when you threaten them, that's exactly what can happen. They can be harmed physically or emotionally. And when you're threatening your child, it also is going to affect your relationship because now they're fearful of you. And you never want your child to be afraid of you, afraid that you're going to inflict physical harm on them in order for them to do something, because then they don't feel safe around you and it affects your connection, and it will also increase behaviors because there's that fear factor there. So one good thing to do would be, if you're in a situation like that, the very next time you're going to ask yourself, okay, what can I have prepared next time? Is my child bored when we're going somewhere? Is it clear when we go out to the store that we're not buying anything? Is that already understood? Are the expectations already discussed beforehand? And even though you can discuss the expectation beforehand, you can still have some issues, but they will begin to decrease because your child knows before you walk out of that door, we are going to this store. We're going to buy this. We're not going to buy this. This is for mom. This is for dad. This is for aunt. We're going to buy school supplies. Here's what you're able to spend. Here's what you're able to buy. And then there can be times where you can give them an option to take them somewhere where they can purchase some things, maybe with their money or with allowance or just a set amount. But those things need to be communicated and discussed before you take your child out to a store. You have to look at it this way. It's very difficult for a child to understand that you took me to a toy store. I am a child. Children play with toys. Those things in stores are made for your child to look at them and want them. Lots of toys in a toy store say, push me, try me. Those are for children to do that. So those things are set up for a child to go, I want that, and I want that, and I want that, I want that. We were children once too. And things in a toy store, appeal to us as well. So, you got to look at it in fairness to your child. If you take me to a candy store and you tell me I can't have candy, it seems and feels a little unfair to a child. Just like if you were taken to a place of something that's your favorite or something that you like, and someone says, hey, you really like tools? I'm going to take you to the best tool store there is. but you can't have anything, and you can't touch anything, and you can't try anything. To me as an adult, if someone said that to me, I would say, then why are you taking me here if I can't touch it, if I can't play with it, if I can't purchase it? I want those things. So why would you take me here? So those are kind of things to think about. Those are kind of conversations to have. What can you have available for your child before you go? Is there something in the car you can have for them? Is there some kind of coping skills? Is there some kind of coloring book or their favorite toy or animal or something they can have that they can use to kind of fidget with to keep their attention off of they can't have this and they can't have that? Because each time you take them to one of those places, you're probably going to have some kind of acting out behaviors. And some of it is very understandable. Some of it is very age appropriate to a degree, especially you talk about the age of your child. You have a 2-year-old, you have a 3-year-old, 5-year-old, 10-year-old, you have a teenager. They want certain things. Certain things appeal to them. So when you take them to that area or to that store where things appeal to them, they're going to want those things. And those things are truly age appropriate. So as a parent, one of the things that you should do is focus on other tools other than threats and bribes. Okay? Communication with your child. Discussion before you go. Discussion there. Discussion after you leave. Even if they have a difficult time, having a discussion when you get home. Hey, let's talk about what happened at the store. You wanted this. You got frustrated when I say no, and you talk those things out, because when you do that, you're showing that you care and that you're open to trying to figure out how it can work for you and your child. And so that also shows respect. It also shows respect for their feelings and their needs and their wants. So they really want a double scoop of ice cream, but they can only have one and they're having a hard time. Okay, that's a kid thing. That's really a kid thing. But you have to also be very consistent that you are setting limits in your home and when you're outside of your home, because you can't pick and choose when you're going to set limits, because it's going to confuse your child. If they can have whatever they want whenever they're with you, and then you're in a situation you said, nope, you can only have one, it's very confusing. Hey, it's a buffet everywhere else, but now here I can only have a little. It's confusing, and it's going to cause a child to feel like you're not treating them fairly, and they're going to act out. So threats and bribes are not effective tools. For more training, coaching, you can call us at 480-740-4976, or you can email us at cjempowersparents@gmail.com. We have lots of tools for you to use and to learn to prevent difficult behaviors and to intervene when you have these difficult behaviors. There's a lot of things that can be prevented, but it just takes some planning. It doesn't take a lot of time, but it does take some effort. So thank you so much for joining the podcast today. You can check us out on Instagram at CJ Empowers Parents. You can also check us out on YouTube at CJ Behavior Coaching. We're also on Facebook at CJ Behavior Coaching and Consulting, LLC. Thank you so much for checking into our podcast. If you have any questions, anything you'd like us to talk about on our podcast, please feel free to reach out to us, and have a great day.